super quick intro into the main rule concepts and how they work. So if you've played Warhammer Fantasy Battle, any of those versions, you'll recognise a lot of this. In Kings of War, being designed by the same people who made Warhammer Fantasy Battle, is essentially a speedier, cleaned up version of that. So a lot of this won't be new. So in a game of Kings of War, you're trying to achieve victory over the opponent, and there's various ways to do that, but they all involve defeating or at least not being defeated by the enemy army. So in your turn, with all your units, you can move and then shoot and cast magic and fight melee, and the opponent does the same, and you alternate turns for 6 or 7 turns, and the game is over, and you check the victory conditions. So we have a couple of units here to illustrate a couple of key concepts. So a unit of dwarf shield breakers and a unit of riverguard tree leapers. So let's just have a look at some details on their sheets, which I have here. So there's the information about the dwarf shield breakers, and over here's the riverguard tree leapers. So if we look at these statistics here, let's have a look. We've got first of all we've got regiment, and it's got 20 there. Look over here, same thing, regiment 20. So the 20 just means that the sort of number of figures you put on one of these bases, if you can. Though that can be a bit of a challenge with some of the chunkier figures these days. So you notice I managed to fit 15 dwarves on there, and these riverguard, given all their big weapons and dynamic poses, I've only managed to get a dozen on there. But the number of figures doesn't matter. It's the size of the base that does. So that's fine. And you can use your old Warhammer armies if you want on movement trays, which is what we used to do years ago. But for reasons of speed and avoiding the hassle of ranking them all up, multi-basing like this is a good option too. So the statistics here, we have speed. Okay, so the dwarves it's 4, for these tree leaper regiments 7. And so what can you do with that? So in your turn, you can move that amount as a basic move. You can go 4 for the dwarves, and they can turn up to 90 and still move 4, or they can sidestep 2 inches, or go back 2 inches, half your move in both those cases. Or if you don't turn at all, you can also go straight ahead 8 inches, double your move like that. So those are the basic options you can do. And one more, of course, is if you have enemy within 45 degrees of straight ahead of you, you can double your move and charge them, which in this circumstance is the sort of thing you'd want to do, like that, and attack them. So then we come to looking at how you do that. So if we have a look at these dwarves, you'll see they have a melee of 3, so they need 3+ to hit on every attack dice they roll. And if you look over there, they've got 12 attacks, so they're rolling 12 dice needing 3s to hit the enemy. And then to cause damage to the enemy, Over here, you look at the defense of these tree leapers, and it's 4, so they need 4s to win them. So if you remember the old Warhammer, it had toughness and armour. This is kind of a combo stat which has both of those in it. Counts for both of them. So what we'd normally be looking at then with these two units is that that dwarf unit would roll 12 dice, so we get out 12 dice. And it would need 3s to hit those River Guard. And they would then need 4s to cause damage to them. Now, there's sometimes a few modifications to that though, because of special rules that units might have, which is the case here. So first off, if we look at these River Guards and their special rules, you'll notice, amongst other things, they have ensnare. And what that means, if they're attacked from the front, the enemy is at -1 to hit them because they have tridents and nets and poison and sticky tongues and so on. So rather than needing 3s, 3, 4, 5 or 6 on a d6, the dwarves will need 4s to hit them. So let's see what happens. There we go. So that's a lot of rolls there that hit. And then, like I said, they need 4s, given the defense of 4 for the River Guard, to do damage to them. So let's see what happens. But once again, special rules for some units. And these dwarf shield breakers have crushing strength 1, and that's because they've got these big hammers here. So they do extra damage. So they add 1 to their roll. So rather than needing 4s, they need 3s. Okay, so there we go. And you can see we've done 5 damage to the River Guard. So you put a damage dice on them, taking 5 damage. And so what does that damage represent? Well, first of all, it's wounds, obviously, but also broken equipment and fatigue and just stress, information breaking up, all that sort of thing. So if you look at historical combat with troops, obviously not dwarves and frogs, but historically, when people were using these sort of weapon types, ancient medieval warfare, the actual casualties were pretty low until one side had a few holes open up in its formation, and suddenly it would just go, collapse, and then it would take quite heavy casualties. So Kings of War simulates that quite nicely. So when you do damage, at the end of the melee phase, you roll to see if you waver or destroy the unit. So if we have a look at this River Guard unit, it's got a nerve value over here, NE, which for this unit is 1416. So the dwarves roll 2 dice and get a 9, and add 5 to that, the damage the unit's taken. That's a 14. And if we look at the nerve there, we see a 1416. So if you get your first value there, the waver value, 14, then that unit becomes wavered. And basically what that means, which is what's happened there, is that those River Guard are going to miss their next turn essentially, which will mean they're in a lot of trouble. They won't get to attack, and very likely those shield breakers would finish them off in the next turn. If they'd rolled even higher than that and got the 16, the unit would just be gone. Nice and simple. Just come back here and mention a few other brief rules and things on this sheet. So you'll notice I've talked about the speed, the melee factor, the defense factor, the attack value. So what are these other things? And the nerve value. So what are these other things? So first of all we've got RA, which is ranged. So these have no shooting attacks, but that's what your number is there for. H, that's height. So you can only see over things which you have a higher height than. So for example, these dwarves are height 2, and these frogs are height 2, so you can't see, they can't see over each other. Unit strength. So unit strength is just a measure of how strong the unit is, really, and it's used for various things like working out who might hold a point on the table. Like in this scenario, we're playing invade. Whoever has the most unit strength in the opponent's deployment zone at the end of the game wins. So the unit strength of both these units, I think, is 3. Yep, 3. And yeah, what else? That's about it, really. Just mention some other special rules here. What? Perhaps we'll look at these frog tree leapers. You notice they have fly, which in this case doesn't represent them actually flying, but jumping. So one of their special abilities is they get to jump over enemy units, which can be quite cool. They're also nimble, which means they get an extra 90-degree turn. They're also, though, if we look at the points here, given they've got some of these extra abilities, these regiments of shield breakers are pretty good units, and they come out to 140 points, or 115, 155 if you include their throwing mastiff, whereas these tree leapers are quite expensive at 170. So